I didn't cry. Not when I saw the for sale sign jammed into the lawn. Not when I realized the front door key I'd used for years didn't fit anymore. Not even when I opened the first garbage bag and found my high school hoodie folded next to a shattered picture frame. I just stood there, blinking, like maybe the house would blink back and explain itself. I'd driven 4 hours straight all the way from campus to the neighborhood where I grew up. It was supposed to be spring break. I hadn't been home in a few months. Finals had wrecked me, and I just wanted to sleep in my old bed, smell the kitchen in the morning, let my mom ask me 1,000 questions while I tried to pretend I wasn't still exhausted. But the house was empty. The windows were bare, no curtains, no signs of life. Just the reflection of me standing there with a duffel bag and a knot in my stomach. 3 big black garbage bags sat on the porch, like trash waiting for pickup. One of them had my name scrawled in Sharpie on duct tape. I didn't move for a second. I think my brain was still trying to file this under temporary misunderstanding, like maybe the house was being renovated. Maybe this was some weird joke. Maybe I had the wrong address. Then the neighbor across the street, Mr. Klein, came out onto his porch and just stared. Not waved, not smiled. Just watched me. That's when the panic started creeping in. I called my dad first. 3 rings. "Hello," he answered flat as ever. "Dad," I said. "The house is empty. There's garbage bags with my stuff on the porch. What's going on?" A pause. Not even a breath. "We moved," he said. That was it. "We moved." "No, how are you?" "No, sorry, we forgot to mention." Just a tone like I should have known already. I swallowed hard. You moved?" "Yeah," he said, "last week." "You didn't tell me." My voice cracked. I hated that. I was trying to stay level, calm, professional even. "You should have called first," he said. "You're an adult now. Deal with it." Then he hung up. Just like that. I stood there on the porch for I don't know how long. Phone still in my hand, heart doing somersaults in my chest. The bags rustled a little in the breeze. I sat down on the steps and stared at them. I didn't even open them right away. Eventually I did. There was a stack of books I'd left over winter break. Some sweaters, a few framed photos, one of them cracked right down the middle of my mom's face. My high school diploma bent, a birthday card from 3 years ago. No note, no explanation, just evidence. Like someone had swept up a life and dumped it on the porch like junk. I tried my mom's phone, voicemail, tried my little brother, nothing, texted my uncle, all quiet. It was like I'd been erased, like I'd just stopped existing to them. I ended up dragging the bags back to my car, loaded them into the trunk. My hands were shaking so bad I dropped one and had to scoop my books off the pavement. I checked into a $59 a night motel off the freeway, the kind with cigarette burns in the comforter and a buzzing fluorescent light in the bathroom. I laid everything out on the bed. My things, my trash bag life. I remember picking up a photo of me from my quinceañera. I looked so happy, so stupidly happy. My parents on either side of me all smiles. That night I didn't sleep. I just kept thinking, what did I miss? What did I do? Because that's where your brain goes first, right? If your family leaves you like that without warning, without goodbye, it must be your fault somehow. You must have done something to deserve it. But I didn't. I really didn't. And if they wanted to leave me behind, fine. They could disappear. But I wasn't going to. Not quietly. The next morning, I drove to the nearest Starbucks and sat in the parking lot with a lukewarm coffee, trying to convince myself this was just a bad dream. But the bags were still in my trunk. The voicemail inbox was still empty, and my family still gone. I don't know why I tried my mom's number again. Muscle memory, maybe. She didn't answer. I texted her. Just let me know where you are, please. Nothing. I sat there thinking about all the little things I'd done for them. I'd sent $100 home every month from my work-study job, skipped every spring break trip to save money, even passed up a summer law prep program last year because my dad said they were struggling. I remember him saying, "We're proud of you, Misha, but we really need help right now." So I said, okay. No hesitation, I helped. And this was how they said, thank you. I started mentally sorting through memories, looking for cracks I might have missed, red flags, warning signs. My dad had always been stoic. That was the nice word for it. He didn't talk much unless something needed fixing or someone needed correcting. My mom was warmer, but tired, always tired. She worked long hours cleaning houses. Still managed to text me once in a while, but nothing that hinted at this. No fights, no warning, no hint that my childhood home would be gone before I got a chance to say goodbye to it. After 2 nights in the motel, I called Professor Wilkins. She taught my constitutional law seminar and had always been one of the few people I felt safe around. She had this gentle, no-nonsense way of listening, like she didn't need to fill the silence to make it meaningful. I didn't plan to tell her everything, just enough to ask for advice. But the second she answered, I broke. "They're gone," I said. "Who's gone?" "My family, the house, everything." She didn't ask if I was sure. She didn't question my version of the story. She just said, "Do you need somewhere to stay?" I think I cried harder hearing that than I did on the porch. She cleared out her guest room that same afternoon. Gave me clean sheets. Let me sleep. Didn't ask too many questions. "Take your time," she said. "Focus on what you can control." So I threw myself into work. My internship at Riverton Law Partners was supposed to be part-time, just a few hours a week, helping with case research. But I started staying later, volunteering for intake interviews, asking to shadow attorneys during meetings. I didn't want to go back to campus yet. Everyone else was posting beach selfies and family barbecues, and I was waking up to nightmares about being locked out of my own life. At Riverton, I found distraction, purpose even. The clients were mostly low-income tenants, elderly people being pushed out by developers, students being ghosted by landlords, single moms with eviction notices they didn't understand. I met one woman who had her rent raised by $500 overnight and was told, "If you can't pay, move." I remember watching her cradle her baby while trying not to cry. Something about it hit too close. I knew that feeling, the shame of being discarded, like your stability doesn't matter, like you're disposable. One night, after helping intake 3 cases back-to-back, I stayed late organizing files. That's when Eleanor Grayson, one of the lead attorneys, found me. She leaned in the doorway, burning the midnight oil. "These families have 2 weeks to leave," I said, "and most of them don't even know their rights." She nodded. "Unfortunately, 2 weeks is better than what some places give." "It's not right," I said. "They're being ambushed." No notice, no support, just boom homeless. Eleanor walked over and sat on the edge of the desk. So she asked, "What are you going to do about it?" I didn't have an answer yet, but her question stuck. A few weeks later, I attended a financial aid seminar back on campus, mandatory, boring, full of PowerPoint slides. But one line changed everything. The presenter said students who want to launch social initiatives can apply for a university innovation grant. Up to $25,000 in seed funding. Something clicked in my brain. Like a door I didn't know existed just flew open. That night, I stayed up until 4 a.m., writing a proposal for what I called the Safe Haven Project, a campus-based legal support program for students and low-income families dealing with housing issues. Not just research, real help, real advocacy. Eleanor helped me refine the legal scope. Professor Wilkins proofread every draft. I submitted the application with trembling hands and no expectations. Then, 3 days later, I got a voicemail from my father. "Jasmine, your mother is worried. Call us." No apology, no explanation, just call us. I didn't. 3 days after that. "This silent treatment is childish, Jasmine. We're still your family." I saved it, then blocked the number. More voicemails came from my mom, my brother, even relatives I hadn't spoken to in years. All variations of, "She cries every night. Can't you find it in your heart to forgive? Whatever happened, we're still blood." Still, no one admitted what they'd done. They skipped over the truth, wanted reconciliation without responsibility, and then it got worse. Mrs. Hernandez, our old neighbor, called me out of the blue. "Sorry to bother you," she said. "Your brother gave me this number. I didn't want to overstep, but something happened at the house." I froze. "Someone broke in," she continued. "Police think it was just kids. The place is still listed, but your dad asked me to check. He thought maybe you came back." I almost laughed. "I don't even have keys anymore." She hesitated. "There's something else. The person who broke in. They left something behind. An envelope with your name on it. It looks official. From a law firm." My stomach dropped. I asked her to open it. I listened as she read line by line about my grandmother's estate in Mexico. A resort property sold. 2 units. My name listed as inheritor. The balance, over $400,000. I couldn't speak. "That can't be right," I whispered. "She didn't have that kind of money." Mrs. Hernandez paused. The letter says the property was developed after her passing. You were listed as next of kin. It was finalized. Last March. Last March. A month before they moved. A month before they left me behind like old furniture. They knew. They knew I had an inheritance coming. And they abandoned me anyway. No wonder they never gave me a forwarding address. No wonder they started calling again. They hadn't panicked. They'd planned. I stared at my phone for hours after that call from Mrs. Hernandez. Not just stunned. Hollow. $400,000. Not just left to me, kept from me. By people who raised me. Who made me believe we had nothing. Who told me my scholarship was the family's pride. Who said we all sacrifice so one of us can make it. And when the return came, they took it for themselves. I called the law firm listed in the letter. They confirmed everything. The inheritance was legally mine. The notice had been sent to my parents because I was still a minor at the time, 19. They'd known for almost a year, and they didn't say a word. Instead, they moved out, left my belongings in trash bags, blocked me from the account that had my name on it. You think you'll react big when something like that happens? Yell, throw something, curse. I didn't. I just sat very still in the Riverton office and let the rage bloom slow and quiet in my chest, like a bruise spreading under skin. Later that night, I told Professor Wilkins. They knew I said, the inheritance, my grandmother, all of it. She didn't try to comfort me. She just asked, have you considered why? Money, I said. They probably thought they deserved it more than I did. She raised an eyebrow. Or maybe they planned to tell you on their terms, when they could control the narrative. That made me feel worse, because it felt true. They knew I'd find out eventually, I said. So they tried to write themselves into the story before I could reclaim it. 3 days later, I got an email from the Watkins Foundation. Congratulations! You've been selected as a finalist. Please prepare a presentation outlining your project's impact and future plans. My heart leapt, but only for a second. The rest of me was still tangled in betrayal. I had less than 2 weeks to get everything together. Eleanor and I worked nonstop. She pushed me hard, refining every section of the pitch, reminding me to focus on impact. This isn't about proving yourself, she said. It's about showing them what the world needs. But for me, it was both. I wanted to win the grant because Safe Haven deserved it, but also because I needed to prove to myself, to the universe, that I wasn't going to be broken by people who were supposed to love me. The night before the pitch, I barely slept. I laid out my navy blazer like it was armor, rehearsed my intro 4 times in front of Professor Wilkins' cats. You're ready, she said, sipping tea. You've been ready. Saturday came. The Watkins Foundation offices were in a glass tower downtown, the kind with polished floors and neutral art. Eleanor met me in the lobby, looking immaculate, of course. You okay? She asked. I nodded, but my stomach was doing somersaults. Remember, she said, these people care about solutions. Show them how you make change possible. We were escorted into a boardroom with 8 people, philanthropists, business leaders, 1 retired judge. All polite, smiling, but intimidating. I connected my laptop, took a deep breath, started the pitch. I talked about what Safe Haven had done in just 6 months, the 23 students we'd helped avoid wrongful eviction, the families we connected with pro bono legal aid, the housing literacy workshops we were piloting on campus. I told them about Devin, a sophomore, whose landlord had illegally rented out his room over break, and Maribel, a single mom with a newborn facing a rent hike double what she could afford. These are not isolated cases, I said. They're systemic, and we're building the system to fight back. 10 minutes in, just as I was describing our plans to expand to nearby colleges, the door opened. A foundation assistant entered, whispered something to Mr. Watkins, the board chair. He looked at me, clearly uncomfortable. I apologize for the interruption, he said. Ms. Cruz, there are some people in the lobby. They claim to be your family. They're very insistent on speaking with you. Time stopped. I saw the faces around the table shift, curious, concerned. Eleanor's hand slid across the table and rested briefly on mine. Your call, her eyes said. I inhaled slowly. Please tell them I'll speak with them after the presentation, I said. My voice was calm, almost casual. Inside, I was ice and fire all at once. Mr. Watkins nodded. The assistant left. I turned back to the board, clicked to the next slide. As I was saying, I continued, our work is only just beginning. When we wrapped 20 minutes later, the board thanked us and promised to be in touch within 2 weeks. Eleanor gave me a quiet, approving nod. You were brilliant, she said as we gathered our materials, especially under pressure. But I wasn't thinking about the pitch anymore. I was thinking about who was waiting in the reception area. My parents. And Gabriel. They were exactly as I remembered, and not at all. My mother stood the moment she saw me, eyes, red lips, trembling like she'd been holding back tears for an hour. My father remained seated, arms crossed, expression unreadable. Gabriel hovered between them, taller now, but still wearing that same lost look he'd had since he was 15. Jasmine, my mom said softly, stepping forward. We need to talk. I didn't move. Eleanor squeezed my shoulder. I'll give you some space. Call me later, okay? I nodded, eyes still locked on my parents. How did you even know I'd be here, I asked once we were alone. We saw the article, my mother said. The campus paper, the one about your project. It mentioned this event. I shook my head. So you decided to show up now after everything? My father stood. This has gone on long enough, he said. You're being childish. I almost laughed. Childish, I repeated. You left my belongings in garbage bags, sold our house without telling me, disappeared. And I'm the one being childish. We made a mistake, my mother said quickly. We want to make it right. Now I asked. After I've rebuilt everything, after I don't need you anymore, Gabriel finally spoke. Jazz, please, just hear them out. I turned to him. Did you know about the inheritance? He looked away. I nodded. So that's what this is really about. My father's jaw clenched. You always assume the worst. No, I said quietly. I assume what you've shown me. That when faced with a choice to include me, to trust me, to love me, you chose yourselves. The room fell quiet. We were ashamed, my mother whispered. We were behind on the mortgage. Your father lost his job. We thought, maybe it was better if we started over. You didn't even ask for help. You had your scholarship. You had a good life. We didn't want to drag you down. You didn't want to be honest. She didn't deny it. Gabriel looked up. They know they messed up, Jazz. They know. Just can't we start over? I stared at them, these people who gave me life, but took my voice, who made me question my worth, my memory, my sanity. I've built something, I said. Something that doesn't depend on your approval or your version of love. My father stepped forward. We're still your family. No, I said. Family doesn't put your life in garbage bags. I pulled out a 20 and placed it on the coffee shop table. For the drinks. Then I walked out. I didn't cry after I walked out of that coffee shop. I didn't rage or scream or collapse in the parking lot, like the dramatic version of me might have once imagined. I just got in the car, shut the door, and stared out the windshield for a long time. There was no grand emotional explosion. Just this silence. And for the first time since it all began, since the porch, the trash bags, the voicemails, the silence didn't hurt. It felt like mine. That afternoon, I called Eleanor and told her what happened. She listened without interrupting, then said, You handled that better than most adults I know. That was yours to own, and you did. I still wasn't sure how to describe the feeling. It wasn't victory, it wasn't closure. It was something quieter, like I'd stopped bleeding from a wound I didn't know I'd been carrying. A week later, I got the call from the Watkins Foundation. Safe Haven had been awarded the full $300,000 grant, plus an additional $50,000 in operational support. I was alone when I picked up the phone. I remember sitting in my borrowed bedroom at Professor Wilkins' house, staring at my laptop, half expecting another email from someone asking me to prove I was worth the space I took up. But this wasn't that. They didn't want a defense. They believed in the work. They believed in me. I let myself feel it, every ounce of that moment. Not because the money solved everything, but because it meant we were real now. The initiative that started as a late-night idea, scribbled between tears and insomnia, was going to be something permanent. That night, Wilkins baked a pie badly, and Eleanor brought champagne. We sat in the living room like three women from different lives, orbiting the same quiet truth. This was only the beginning. The next few months moved fast. Safe Haven moved out of our donated closet-sized room at Riverton and into a rented office downtown. Nothing fancy, just 2 rooms, a window, and enough space for 3 desks and a mini fridge. We hired 2 part-time legal aides, started a rotation of law students from nearby schools who needed clinic hours. The calls didn't stop. If anything, they tripled. We helped a student whose landlord had changed the locks after she filed a noise complaint. We got a stay of eviction for a single dad raising 2 kids in a rent-controlled unit after his building was bought by a tech investor who tried to triple the rent. We held weekend workshops in laundromats and libraries, places where people actually were. The days were long and sometimes frustrating, but every case, every win, every moment someone walked out feeling heard, it added a brick to something I didn't even realize I was building. My life, a new one. The inheritance cleared around the same time the grant did. I had contacted the law firm in Mexico directly, and they'd walked me through the process of claiming it. The final statement came in a thick envelope with embossed lettering and official seals. When I opened it, I sat very still and read it twice. $417,926. Mine. Untouched. There was something sacred about that. Not because of the money itself, though. Of course it helped. It meant I didn't have to worry about rent or groceries, or whether I'd have to pause safe haven if the grant ever ran out. But what mattered more was how I got it. Not through begging, not through confrontation, not through someone deciding I'd earned it. Just through truth. I didn't touch it right away. I let it sit for weeks. Then I opened a separate account, created a budget, hired a financial advisor who didn't talk down to me. I told her I wanted this money to outlive me, to mean something beyond survival. We built a reserve fund for safe haven. I made a plan to establish a housing scholarship for students in crisis, and I started funding it quietly, privately, with money that should have always been mine. I'd like to say that was the end of the story, but people like my parents don't fade quietly. At first the calls slowed, then stopped altogether. I thought maybe that was it. Maybe they'd accepted it. Then came the messages from extended family. Your parents aren't perfect, but they're still your parents. You can't hold a grudge forever. They're trying. Don't you owe them at least a conversation? I never replied. Forgiveness to them meant pretending nothing happened, that we could just pick up where we left off. But I didn't want what we had before. I didn't want proximity without trust, appearances without truth. So I held the line. That didn't mean I wasn't tempted. There were days I missed the illusion, the version of my family I thought I had. The kind where we took beach photos and made tamales and cheered at graduations. The one where love felt simple. But that version of my life wasn't real. The truth was this. They saw my worth when it served them. They abandoned me when it didn't. And now that I stood on my own, they wanted back in, not to repair, but to reclaim. One night, I was alone in the office catching up on casework when I found myself staring at the call log. My mother's number, my father's, Gabriel's. Hundreds of missed calls stacked like a record of everything they hadn't said when it mattered. I hovered over my mom's contact. I thought about dialing, just to hear her voice, just to ask why one more time. But I didn't, because I already knew, and I no longer needed the answer. There's a photo on my desk now, one of the only ones I kept from those garbage bags. It's from when I was 8, standing in front of our old house with my grandmother. She's wearing this deep maroon sweater, holding a tray of pan dulce she baked herself. I'm smiling. My head's tilted toward her shoulder. I didn't remember that day until recently. But now I look at it every morning before work, because that woman, she left me more than money. She left me proof that I came from someone who believed in giving, not taking. A few weeks ago, I got an email from a national news outlet. They wanted to feature Safe Haven in a segment on youth-led legal activism. They'd seen the write-up in the university alumni paper and wanted to hear more. I said yes. Not for attention, not for recognition, but because stories like mine don't get told unless people like me tell them. The interview aired on a Wednesday. It ran longer than expected. They included shots of our office clips of student testimonials and a short interview with me, sitting in our tiny conference room, explaining why I started all of this. My family left me when I needed them most, I said, so I built something they couldn't take away. Simple, direct, no name-dropping, no venom. Just truth. Later that night, Professor Wilkins called. I saw it, she said. What did you think? You looked strong, she said. Not angry, just grounded. I smiled. I feel that way now, I said, grounded. And I meant it. The segment aired on a Wednesday night. By Thursday morning, I had 3 missed calls from my mother's number. By Friday, I had 10. I didn't listen to them. I didn't need to. I already knew the rhythm of those voicemails. Soft guilt, heavy nostalgia, vague apologies laced with quiet demands. We're proud of you. We just want to talk. You're still our daughter. They always ended the same way, like I owed them something. Like forgiveness was a favor I hadn't granted fast enough. But this time, I didn't feel torn. I didn't feel anything, really. Not numb, not like before. Just certain. There was nothing left to fix. A week after the interview, aired Safe Haven's website traffic spiked by over 600%. Our intake forms crashed. Emails poured in from students' legal clinics, even city organizers, asking if we had expansion plans. We didn't, but we would. We got invited to speak at panels, partner with public defenders. Someone from the Department of Housing even reached out for a consultation. It was surreal, but not overwhelming, because we'd built slow, with intention, brick by brick. The same way I rebuilt myself, then came the letter. It arrived by mail, a heavy, cream-colored envelope with my name written in unfamiliar handwriting. Inside a folded sheet of lined paper, written in my father's careful, rigid script. Elena, we saw your interview. We are glad to see you're doing well. You always had potential. Your mother cried after watching. We've talked a lot about what happened, about what we did. There's no excuse, but there's a reason: pride, fear, shame. Maybe it's too late to matter, but we did what we thought we had to do. I know that doesn't help, but I wanted to say it anyway. I hope you keep doing good work, Dad. No, I'm sorry. No, I was wrong. Just a shadow of admission. Just enough to crack open an old ache, but not enough to sew it shut. I folded the letter and slid it into a file labeled Personal Do Not Revisit. Because that's what it was, now a closed chapter. A finished volume I had no plans to reread. Gabriel sent a text not long after. I'm applying to transfer next year. To your university. Thought you should know. I stared at it for a long time. My thumb hovered over the screen. I typed a response. That's good. I hope you find your people. Then I deleted it. I didn't answer. Not because I was punishing him, but because I didn't owe anyone access to my healing. Least of all people who watched me fall and chose silence. It's strange how grief doesn't always feel like grief. Sometimes it's just space where something used to be. A version of your life you can still picture, even if you never want to return to it. Sometimes it's remembering things that feel too small to matter, but hit harder than you expect. Like a voicemail from my mom when I was 17, telling me not to forget my scarf because it was windy. Or the way my dad used to say, "We didn't come to this country for you to waste your shot." I didn't waste it. I just stopped letting them define what it looked like. Safe Haven celebrated its first anniversary last month. We held a community event, small but packed. Local musicians played. We had food trucks, legal Q&A booths, free tenant rights pamphlets printed in English, Spanish, and Vietnamese. We made it a block party with a mission. I stood near the stage as one of our clients, a woman named Amina. We'd helped fight off a wrongful eviction, took the mic, and thanked us publicly. She looked at me with tears in her eyes and said, "You didn't just help me. You saw me." That moment, that was it. That was the payoff. Not the grant, not the media, not the social clout or partnerships. Being seen and helping others be seen without conditions, without apology. That's what I built. That's what I'll keep building. A reporter asked me once, "What would you say to your family if they were watching this interview?" I smiled. "Nothing." Then I paused. Well, actually, one thing I added. "Thank you." Because when you left me with nothing, I found everything I needed in myself. And that's the truth. When people ask me what happened, why I started this nonprofit, what my motivation was, I don't give them the full story. Not unless they've earned it. Not unless they're asking from a place of real care, not curiosity. Usually I just say I wanted to make sure no one ever feels invisible again. That's enough. The house I live in now has soft walls and warm lights, and nobody walking on eggshells. It smells like cinnamon sometimes like fresh paint. I let people over who make me feel calm, not obligated. It's not big, but it's mine. The life I've built, it's not perfect, but it's honest. And the family I have now, they're not related to me, but they show up. That's all I've ever needed. Sometimes I think about that day on the porch, the garbage bags, the empty windows, the sunset casting long shadows over the maple tree in the yard. I remember thinking I'd lost everything, but that was the day I started over. That was the day I stopped waiting for anyone to come back for me and started walking forward alone but free. They left me behind to start a new life. I did too, I just made sure mine didn't include them. Sometimes the people who raise you aren't capable of standing beside the person you grow into. And that's not your failure, it's just their limit. I used to think being left behind meant I wasn't enough. Now I know it meant I was never meant to follow them. They thought they were closing the door on me, but they only locked themselves out. You don't always get justice through revenge. Sometimes the quiet life you build without them is the loudest thing you'll ever say.